Hi, everyone. Karen Holly back, and I am super excited about our guest today. I'm always excited about our guests, but I've been dying to have Dr. Mindy Pelz on the Menopause Life channel, and I am thrilled today to have her. So, Mindy, say a quick hi.
Hello, hello. Excited to be
For,
here.
yeah. For those of you who don't know who Mindy is, she is a best time selling author. She's a keynote speaker. She's a guru of nutrition and functional medicine. She's a recognized leader in the alternative health field, which is why I really, really wanted to have her on here. And more importantly, she's a pioneer in the fasting space, in the fasting movement. And what I also love about Mindy is she teaches the principles that take science into account, but also lifestyle and diet variation. And she talks about different ways in which women can detox. She has this phenomenal YouTube channel, which we will point you to at the end as well, where I think you do them weekly, right,
Yeah,
Mindy?
we do 2 a week.
It's
Yep.
incredible. And one of the ones I watched, which she's going to share some information on today a little bit as well, is really focused on hormones and what she calls the hormone hierarchy. And since this is for all the viewers at KH Essentials and Menopause Life, we really wanted to focus today on all this information she has that she can share with you on the hormone hierarchy, how to tap into tools how to tap into your body's own intelligence. And one thing I love about Mindy as well that we share in commonality besides advocacy for women's health is maximizing human performance and figuring out ways to speed up the healing process. So it is an honor, Mindy, to have you on. And
Oh, thank
so
you.
I thought we could start with having you share your story. How did you become so passionate about what you're doing today?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. There were a lot of roads that led me to where I am today, but probably the biggest one was my own menopausal journey. When I hit 40, I was in the best shape of my life. I had a goal to fit into my skinny jeans, and I had a number on the scale that I wanted, and it was like this huge achievement, to be loving the body that I was living at 40, and loving that body. By 43, my whole health, mental primarily, had been flipped upside down. I became having trouble sleeping. I was anxious and depressed all the time. I had such bad hot flashes, especially at night, where I'd have to like change the sheets multiple times. I'd change my outfits my PJs every night. I became just really irritable and angry, and it was like a 3-year period. I just went from this peak health state to this hot mess menopausal woman. And when I went searching for answers, basically everybody from my closest friends to the most respected OBs pretty much said, this is menopause, deal with it. And I think I told you this story, it's in the book, but what really set me on my journey was a meeting I had with one of the top OBs who was a friend of mine and in our circle at my kid's school. And I told her what I was experiencing. And she said, Mindy, I have a practice full of women with these symptoms, and my medical textbooks have failed me. I have no idea what to do with them. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that if all women were experiencing this as they were going through menopause, there had to be something in our environment. And I just started to peel back the layers. And that's really how I came up with the 5 things that I teach in the book. And one of those is fasting. We shouldn't be eating all day. And then I learned all the science behind fasting. And from there, everything was experimented on me. And then as I found a tool, we have hundreds of thousands of resetters on my platforms. And I just turned around and experimented with them. And I saw that they all got the same result. And so it really became encouraging and exciting.
I love that story. I mean, you and I both. That's right. When we were speaking a couple weeks ago, it was my being catapulted into menopause through the surgical menopause route, sadly.
Yeah.
But experiencing all that and realizing that OBs don't have all the answers, and so it was research. But I yeah, anyway, I'm
Yeah.
super grateful that you shared the journey. And like, can you do me a favor and hold up the book? So everyone, Mindy is getting ready to launch this book in early, I think it's going to be April 6th,
Yep.
called the Menopause Reset. And it's not out yet. So I don't have a copy, but I will get one shortly. Why don't we start with talking about the five areas in that book, Mindy?
Yeah,
Then,
definitely.
then when we then after that we can go into kind of a little bit of the hormone hierarchy, which you actually may touch upon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is kind of how I look at information is I sort of look at it in a big picture and then I bring it back into the details. So what I didn't realize at 40 when I wanted the number on my scale to look a certain way and I wanted my skinny jeans to fit, what I didn't realize is that those were poor measurements of what was about to happen to me hormonally.
Mhm.
And what happens at 40 is that our ovaries start to make this slow decline. And it's not, I don't know if you felt like this, but if you had asked the 40-year-old version of me, I thought menopause was like a switch. Like you were, one day you had a cycle, the next day it was gone,
Right.
that it was just a switch you turned on and off. My mom actually went through menopause very effortlessly. So I didn't witness a mother who went wackadoodle or crazy with her menopause. So it really sideswiped me that as my ovaries were starting to decline and not produce sex hormones as much, they had to hand that job over to my adrenal glands.
Right.
And so after you go through menopause, your adrenal glands and a little bit of peripheral tissue is what is going to make your sex hormones.
Mhm.
So if your adrenal glands are already tanked, you are in for a wild menopausal ride, which is one of the pieces that happened to me.
Well,
So,
and yeah, and I love that you share that, because if you think about it, women in their 40s are oftentimes at the height of their career, have kids that are either really young, because women are having kids later now, or they're teenagers. So
yep,
irrespective, there's all that added stress. So our adrenals are probably under more stress as we're going through that. And we've got more xenotoxins in the environment now than we did in our moms and grandmothers' ages. So it's
so
why with
true.
these talks, I'm always trying to get the message to women in their 30s so that they're
Yes,
prepared for this, right? So that it's
yes,
not like, oh, I need to deal with menopause at 45 or
yes.
47. Yeah, so
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
great.
and that's such a good point. I was on, we have a membership group, an academy that we do, and we're starting to get younger and younger women in it. And yesterday I got the question, why, if I'm in my 30s, do I need to think about menopause? And I was like, oh my God, that's a brilliant question. Because really, the game plan of your lifestyle needs to dramatically shift once you hit 40.
Mhm.
And you can make that decision like I'm either going to shift it when I get the symptoms or I'm going to start to slowly shift it at 50. And shifting it involves five things. The first is we are not meant to eat all day. And breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. In fact, I just want to bring that to everybody's attention that the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day was an ad campaign that was started back in the 70s when Kellogg's came up with cornflakes. They needed a tagline to drive everybody to eat the cornflakes. So they said breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And now we're all eating breakfast saying the same thing.
And
So
even your grandparents, like, I'm so happy you said that. I didn't realize it was a Kellogg's campaign, because I'll never forget my grandmother, who was a nurse and lived to 98. She was like, break fast, breaking the fast of the night. It's the most
yeah,
important meal, Karen. Your brain needs food. And I was like programmed as a teenager that if I didn't eat, and I never wanted breakfast. If
yep.
I had anything, it was maybe a banana, and I wasn't hungry. I didn't want breakfast. And yet I felt guilty because my grandma told me I was supposed to, right?
Yeah. I mean, how many of us who have kids chased our kids around being like, you got to eat breakfast, you got to it's the most important meal of the day. And then when I like unpacked that, I realized, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Doesn't make any sense.
So
I figured it out when,
tell us why.
well,
Why is it
so
not the most.
yeah, so it's a good question. Why? Let's start with that. Here's what most humans don't know, but every menopausal woman needs to know. And it is that we have two energy systems that we can pull energy from. One is called your sugar burning system, and the other is called your fat burning system. So, when you are eating all day and you're not going long periods of time without food, you are just accessing the sugar burning system and you are completely ignoring the fat burning one. So every diet was done on just the sugar burner. In order to be able to tap into the fat burner, you got to fast. You got to skip a meal. So if you want to skip dinner, you could skip dinner. So if you love breakfast and you're listening to this and you're like, but I love my breakfast. I love my smoothie. Like I was like a smoothie queen before I learned this. Then skip dinner. But you've got to find the first door in is you got to find 13 to 15 hours where you are not eating, because in that time period, you've now switched yourself over to the fat burner system. And in that fat burner system, not only are you burning fat, which is amazing, and every menopausal woman that I've spoken with is frustrated with the weight loss resistance, and we can talk about why that happens. But now your body's making ketones, and ketones will go up into the brain and they start to repair neurons. And so every menopausal woman I've spoken with is having brain fog and loss of memory, walking into rooms and not understanding why they're there, losing their keys. Like this is because the neurons in your brain are starting to degenerate. So when you are making ketones on a regular basis, what happens is you go in there and you regenerate those neurons. So that if nothing else, do it for those two reasons.
Right. And the brain fog is so real. I mean,
Right?
I know, and I think that the surgically induced menopause, I think I felt every symptom at 5,000 times the normal. And
Probably.
um, I went from like 0 to 60, and I ended up having to have like a cognitive brain test because it was so bad so fast. And
Mhm.
it was fascinating. So I love, love, love. Okay, so the first thing, figure out a way to fast 13 to
Yep.
15 hours,
Yep.
whether it's breakfast or dinner. Reduce that so that you can move from a sugar burning to a fat burning um,
Exactly. Yeah.
metabolism. Okay.
Yeah, and I outline steps and stuff in the book. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wait, what did you say? You can go. I'm big on giving information, but then bringing steps to it. This is what I do on YouTube because otherwise people get overwhelmed and they don't do anything.
Right.
So
And you guys, her YouTube channel is awesome. In
thank
fact, she
you.
posted something today we'll talk about at the end. But okay,
Awesome.
so
Thank
what's
you. Okay. Second thing is now we've got to look at varying our diet. So, how many of us eat the same foods over and over and over again? And I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet for menopausal women because as estrogen is doing its up and down routine in our 40s, we become more insulin resistant. And so the ketogenic diet can be very helpful. And if you don't want to do the ketogenic diet, then really you've got in your 40s to take out the breads, the pastas, the cakes, the cookies, all those processed foods, because you may have gotten away with it at 35, but you're not going to get away with it at 45. So and then the other part of that topic is that the week before our cycle, if you still have a cycle, if you're perimenopause, you need to work on building progesterone. And progesterone is built by eating foods like beans and potatoes and squashes and citrus fruits, tropical fruits, foods that are not ketogenic, foods that you may not be eating. But if you can bring your progesterone levels up, it will dramatically help with anxiety. And spotting. A lot of women get the spotting. That's low progesterone. So progesterone calms us, and we start to lose it after 40. So you got to feed it so that you can make as much of it as possible.
I love those tips. I love those tips. Okay, let's go to
Okay,
number
third
three.
third one is your microbiome. So the other thing I discovered is we all have, this is not unique to me, we all have a set of bacteria in our gut called the estrobolome that breaks down estrogen. So in our 40s, we're going to do this wild ride where we have too much estrogen and then not enough estrogen and then too much, and it goes up and down like that. But then once we go into menopause or post menopause, what's going to happen is we get very little estrogen. Estrogen gives us clarity of thought. So those of you that struggle with the brain fog, that can be a decline in estrogen. But estrogen also lubricates like our skin and our joints. So the wrinkling sets in, the mucosal, vaginal dryness. A lot of women complain dry mouth because all of that is dry skin. Doesn't matter how much you drink water. Right, it makes you want to drink water, right? Is that you are just losing estrogen. So you want to make sure that you are taking good care of these bacteria in your gut, and that so they can break it down. And that really is done by 3 foods: polyphenol, probiotic, and prebiotic foods. And so your sauerkrauts, your kimchis, a lot of seeds will help, cloves and spices, even dark chocolate. So I listed them all out in the book, but that is definitely, we want to make sure we're feeding that specific set of bacteria so they can break estrogen down.
Mm. Yeah, and there's so much research in the last, I would say, decade or two
Yeah,
around the gut health and actually how it's the first brain, right? Or the
right.
second brain. It goes
Yep.
back and forth, but yeah, gut health is critical, and I love how you're staying focused, right? Because today is focused on that perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and in your YouTube talk today, you break it out into women under 40, women between 40 and 55, and women post 55, to
Yep.
just to give the audience who may not know like the standard age range of menopause and stuff. That's a good way to kind of generalize and look at it.
Yeah. Agreed.
And now on the progesterone foods, enabling foods, Mindy, that's something that's good throughout our lives, right?
Oh,
So just
yeah.
going back to those 20 and 30 somethings, or even my niece or younger kids, like it's
Yep.
good for them to really eat that balanced diet, and then also alternate. I know people get in habits, but it's like when you do physical exercise, right? Trainers will say, hey, if you do the same sit up all the time, you
Yeah.
actually you aren't strengthening your abdominals. You have to change between the obliques and the
Yep.
transverse abdominals. And so you've got to mix it up
Yep.
to really keep our body optimal, right? So the same goes for food.
Yeah, there's something called a hormetic stress, and our bodies do really well with hormetic stresses. The only thing that doesn't do well with a hormetic stress is progesterone, which is why we don't want a lot of stress that week before your cycle. But fitness, I mean, exercise is a hormetic stress. Fasting is a hormetic stress where you just put a little bit of stress on the body and the body repairs and heals.
Mm.
So that's what we're trying. That's why you'll see a lot of, in everything I teach, a lot of variation, because just when and this is why no diet has ever worked. I mean, we cannot as humans agree on one diet because there is no one diet. Just as one diet's working for you, it stops working if you don't switch it.
Right.
Because so there has to be variation in that. And I would agree with you. My newest passion now is how do we get to the 13-year-olds, the 14-year-old girls, and we teach them how they need to eat and live in accordance with their hormonal cycle. That's my next. After we get done with the menopausal women, we're going down to that age group to see what we can do to help them.
Yeah, well, everyone needs the advocacy and the support and the empowerment, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so we've talked about the first three.
Yep.
Let's go. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so the fourth one is toxins. And here's what again is really interesting. That estrogen ride I talked about where it goes up and down, what that will do is it actually signals to your tissues to dump the toxins that it's been storing. So whenever we get big hormonal swings, puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, all of the toxins that have been in our tissues come dumping out, and then they go into our bloodstream and they get redistributed into areas of where there is fat and nervous tissue. Well, that's the brain. That's 100% the brain. So what is going on is that you have 3 areas in the brain that are not protected by a blood-brain barrier: hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal gland. And those are the areas where those toxins go to. And now they throw off all your hormones. They throw off all of your sleep. So it's old toxins, it's new toxins. We become more sensitive to toxins as we move through menopause than any other time in our life. And I really have come to a place where I feel like if you want to overcome your menopause symptoms, you got to learn how to detox. You got to look at beauty products. We got to look at what we put on our hair. We got to look at the off gassing from our clothes and I mean, we live in this toxic soup. And this is why we have such a huge menopausal issue.
Yeah, when I was interviewing Ann Louise Gittleman last year, we were talking about the
Yeah.
estrogens, and I'll never forget, Mindy, when I lived in Japan between 91 and 98, I lived there, and then again in 2005, 2006. I don't know what I read. I was studying some Chinese medicine at the time, and I remember learning that people who go to the dry cleaners, if they don't take those bags off of, well, first of all, the dry cleaning is horrible in and of itself,
Right.
but those toxins will live in your closet and get on your body. And it's almost like you have to air out your clothes after the dry cleaner.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm huge, obviously, on skincare and body products. That's why I created my own line, but with no toxins because it's our biggest organ. But
Yep.
I think you're right. People forget. They think, okay, I'm eating my salads, I'm eating my sauerkraut, I'm watching my where my meat comes from, but then they'll go and live the rest of their life with a ton of xenotoxins
Yeah.
or xenoestrogens. So
Yeah. It's a
um,
depressing subject. And I just want to say, like, I get it's a daunting task to pull toxins out, and it's a necessary one. I was just did a video for on fasting and infertility, and they're showing infertility rates are going up. There was an incredible article that came out in the New York Times this week that basically said they believe that human extinction is on our horizon because of phthalates, which are in our the air fresheners and our perfumes, and then endocrine disruptors and plastics. And so testosterone levels are going way down. And it's making it so that women are not as fertile and men.
and men, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So on the fourth, around the detox, is there a correlation in your research and world where the fasting can absolutely help with the
Great
detox?
question. Yeah. So there is one fast that will stimulate your own self detox system, and it's called autophagy fasting. And it's at 17 hours of fasting. What happens is the intelligence in our cells turns within because it signals that the blood sugar isn't going up. And it says, okay, we're not getting any more food. So let's go ahead and repair these cells and make them stronger. So in that scenario, what it will do is it repairs mitochondria and organelles that are in there. It'll push out bacteria and viruses that are in there and like start to kill those off, which is amazing given the situation we're in. When you start doing that 17 hours, you stop viral replication, which is incredible. And it just repairs everything. Now, here's what's interesting. If it senses that that cell is going to go rogue, that it could turn into a cancer cell, what it will do is it'll kill the cell. This is how smart we are designed,
Our bodies are miracles, right?
right? A miracle. And so it kills that. But what happens is oftentimes those toxins, because it doesn't know what to do with synthetic man-made toxins. So sometimes those toxins can get redistributed. So we usually recommend if women do a lot of 17-hour fasting that she does some activated charcoal at night or something to bind to that toxin that might be getting released as your body's killing these old cells off and these non-functional cells.
Yeah, I feel like we as humans and also Western medicine gets in the way of this
Oh,
brilliant machine we
yep,
get to have every day.
yep.
My goodness. Okay, so I love this. So one more question on the fasting then, and you mentioned it a little bit in the second and third point because women are different than men. It's critical. So if you have a woman going through the 17-hour fast and she's done it for several days or weeks, let's bring it back to her menstrual cycle. So if she's
Mm.
perimenopause or still in that menopausal state where she's having periods, how important is it for her to think about her cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. The week before your cycle is that when you're making progesterone is the most important time to not fast. So now, if you're listening to this and you're like, but I'm really good at fasting, okay, you could get away with like 13 hours of fasting, but not a lot more than that. Because the name of the game that week before your cycle is to make sure that you don't put a lot of stress on your body. Otherwise, you tank progesterone. Now, if you're a perimenopausal woman and maybe you have like a 60-day or a 90-day cycle, a lot of times what I'll have women do is go out of ketosis, go out of fasting for a week, see if that syncs up their cycle, gets it a little bit better. If it doesn't, then they can go back into more fasting and keto, and then 3 weeks later, go back into that, into a week where you're doing those foods. So, and for postmenopausal women, or like your situation where you've got like a surgical menopause, then 1 day a week, you want to pull yourself out of these ketogenic and fasting states and go into more feasting. So we are meant to go in and out of these states, but women especially, we need to time that with our hormones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, moderation and balance is everything, right? Just in
Yeah.
nature and in life, I think applying it to our bodies is good too. Okay, super informative, everyone. I hope you heard that on the cycles. But again, there's Mindy's got YouTube channels. She's going to have the book. We're going to hold it up again, and then obviously you can replay this. But let's go into number 5.
Yeah. So 5 is the most important probably, and the one that has been the hardest for me to learn. And it's called rushing woman syndrome. I didn't coin it. Dr. Libby Weaver did. She has a great book called Rushing Woman Syndrome. And it's all about how our biology is not meant for overdoing. And this was the hardest one for me to understand. And I hear so many women that say they're doing these other 4 that I just mentioned, but their hormones are out of whack. And we gotta chill out. If adrenals are gonna take over the job that the ovaries did, you're now dealing with an organ that has to make sex hormones, plus it has to make all the stress hormones. So you're going to tank your adrenals and you're going to tank your sex hormones because the poor adrenal glands can't handle all of that.
Right.
So, yeah, so it's really slowing down, saying no to more things. Oh, and it's even like stop running marathons, stop going to CrossFit all the time. I understand we want to stay fit, but we got to throw some more yoga in. We got to throw some more hiking in. We can't. I was in my, to hit that 40-year-old mark, I would run, 2-hour runs on Sunday morning. I'd run an hour 5 other days out of the week. Like I was a big runner. And
Hmm.
once I figured that last one out, I started doing more yoga, shorter runs, more HIIT training, more weightlifting, and it really made a difference.
That's so important, Mindy. I mean, a lot of the crowd I run with, we constantly promote balance and actually
Hmm.
getting into the feminine, right? Because we're in this modern day world where if you've gone into corporate America at all, or even if you're a medical doctor, right? You and I talked about this in another form of advocacy where the medical system is so messed up now that these
Mm,
doctors are, having 15-minute increments with their patients just because the hospital says you have to move faster more,
yeah.
so every part of society now is go, 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 do, instead of just being.
Hmm.
And, we're lucky living in the Bay Area because I think that there's more meditation and being centered and slowing down. But it's a really important reminder because women are totally different in
Right.
that regard. And,
Yeah.
and we're not meant to be doing all the time.
Yeah, the medical doctor issue is, and there's some great ones out there, so I'm not bashing them, but I feel like the medical profession needs to understand the hormonal ebbs and flows of a woman's life and where she is in that. So it breaks my heart when, you get thrown antidepressants because you're in your 40s and you're depressed all the time, or you get thrown Ambien because you're not sleeping. Like these are not solutions. Signs like that is your body's way of telling you, hey, we're hormonally out of balance. And if
Right.
we could get doctors to sync up with that, that would be incredible. But their knowledge of hormones, unless they're like an OB, is almost nil.
Well, and also what the reason why we do these interviews is to empower women to ask the right questions, right?
Yes.
No OBs, most
Yes.
OBs don't get the menopausal training unless
Yep.
they're seeking, NAMS conferences and anything around, menopausal training.
Yep.
So it's not their fault, but we have to take it upon ourselves as women to say, like, I really don't think I need an antidepressant. I think this is hormonal,
Yep.
and if you can't help me, like, who can I get on my team,
That's
right? And
right.
that's when women need to feel so confident about being okay with asking for more doctors on their team.
Yep.
or whether it's a functional medicine expert, or just know that they need to be supported, because this is a unique time in our life.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to get to the hormone hierarchy in a minute, but I had one kind of burning question, because it came
Great.
to me many times when I was going through the obviously the severe estrogen decline, and the brain area, right?
Hmm.
Why do women experience more brain fog than men?
Well, so actually, you know what the flip side of that is
Yeah.
when we have great estrogen, we are better communicators.
Hmm.
We can multitask like nobody's business.
Right.
So part of it is that our superpower of estrogen really serves us for the majority of our life. But when it goes away, it's a more dramatic difference. Whereas men they don't get as much estrogen to help with brain power.
So they're more level. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the difference, because I think I think it might have even been my sister who, when I said, I know it's because of my estrogen, I know my brain's like, because I
Yeah.
started reading so much, right? And she's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, why did men not have that? But you're right, they don't have that decline.
Yeah,
So they're kind of at this state, a consistent state with
yeah,
that particular hormone, even though it does help their brain as well.
that's
They
right.
just operate. Okay, I still want
Yeah.
to do more research on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into, Mindy, what you call the hormone hierarchy in one of your podcasts last year, where you really talk about the six hormones that, again, I feel like everyone should know about, but certainly menopausal and perimenopausal women, because
Hmm.
there's three at the top that if
Yeah.
women don't work with, then their sex hormones will never be okay.
Yes. Yes. Well
Yeah.
said. Okay. Here's how I explain it. And I love this hierarchy. Again, this is something I want to go teach 13-year-olds.
Yes.
So, at the bottom of the hierarchy are your sex hormones. So, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. What controls those three hormones is insulin. So, if you are insulin resistant, you will struggle to balance your sex hormones. So, a lot of people come to fasting because they want to learn how to become insulin sensitive, which is great. But what people forget is above insulin and controlling insulin is cortisol. So if you're a stressed out rushing woman, I could give you the greatest food and fasting program, and you will struggle to get into that fat burning scenario if your stress is at its peak. Now, the cool thing and the part of the whole hierarchy that's the best, and as women we are so good at, is what controls cortisol is oxytocin. So hugging right now, the communication with, especially with other women, the laughter, petting your dog, sex, I mean, touch in general will give these oxytocin boosts. And when you get an oxytocin boost, cortisol goes down. When cortisol goes down, now your food and fasting efforts will be better and insulin can be more sensitive. Once you get insulin under control, now you can manage those sex hormones. So, how many women get thrown antidepressants? How many women get thrown HRT to help balance all these hormones? But it's really because she's super stressed out and she's eating so many carbs. She's not fasting. She's not minding her microbiome. Like you start to see how this unfolds for so many women. And really, we need to come back to let's make some more oxytocin. Like the pandemic was horrible for oxytocin, horrible.
Right.
So we got to bring back hugging. We got to bring back connection because that starts the whole cycle and it can help menopausal women balance those sex hormones.
Yeah, God, I remember when I watched that YouTube that you did on that, and I just was like, I even wrote a post on it and referenced you, because I was like, this is so important for women to know,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know? So,
Agreed.
um, I could talk to you for hours, Mindy.
Thank you.
I adore you. I just
Thank
love your
thank
energy.
you.
I love your mission. I love everything you've done. And I can't wait to have you back. And I
Thank you.
know, both of us have interviewed Anna Kabecka, and we have a lot of people in common that are on this same mission to
Yeah.
educate girls, to educate women, to empower them. And
Yeah.
to, the one thing that, well, there's many things I love about you, but one of the foundational things that I absolutely love is that you are trying to give people the tools to tap into their own body's intelligence.
Yeah,
Right. And
I'm a big like on that topic, and I think this is just so important for all women of all ages to hear. we have to fix lifestyle first. So we can't give our power away to a medication or a doctor or, I call it the magic mushroom, where it's like some supplement, some amazing supplement. You're the magic, you're the hero. So if you fix, this is why I like these 5 things, and they apply actually to 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds. We just become more sensitive to them in our 40s and beyond. But if you fix your lifestyle, your hormone, and you live in accordance with the ebbs and flows of your hormones, everything you want this body to do, everything you want the brain to do, it will do it perfectly. So we need to get that message out to people.
Yeah, because then I think there would also be less cancer. Less,
Oh,
I think a lot less of everything that's negative,
yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
We'll hold up the book one more time. Okay, you
So
guys.
yeah, it's called the Menopause Reset, and what's really cool. This was actually a book that my followers asked me to write, because I got on YouTube and I started sharing, like, this is what I'm doing. But so I just, like, in a couple of months I just poured it out, and it's actually meant to be read in like 24 to 48 hours time period. So it's not one of these thick hormone books that you like, where do I start? You literally, hopefully, and give me feedback, people, as you uh, read it, but you should be able to pick this up, devour it in 2 days, and then implement it right away.
I love
So
I
that's
love
how it built it.
Yay. Thank you so much. And then also, everyone, your website is Family Life Wellness, right? Or you can just Google Mindy Pelz.
Yeah, or Dr. Mindy Pelz is sort of our hub online, and you can find everything I'm doing there.
Yeah.
But we're on all social media platforms. YouTube's, as you mentioned, is my baby. So
Yeah. Well, I cannot wait to have you back. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. You are just a plethora of good information for the
Thank
soul.
you.
And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing. I mean, again, we got to talk about menopause. We have to rebrand it. We need to show that it can be a vibrant time. It doesn't have to be suffering. So I greatly appreciate what you're doing as well.
Of course. Of course. All right. Thanks, Mindy.
My pleasure.